Project 13, which I've already taken the time to cut out the rough dimensions of our project, and I've actually laid out all the dimensions and the numbers. So for this part of the project, you're just going to see how I got those particular numbers. So on Project 13, it's kind of an interesting project because it's a 90-degree change elbow with a curved throat and a curved back or heel as well. Now, they call it a change elbow because what we're going to do here is we're going to have the air entering as a 10-inch opening, and it's going to be leaving as an 8-inch opening with that. So with that part of the project, it is very important because we're making the change that we do build a left cheek and a right cheek. So when they flip themselves over, they're an identical match, that left hand and the right hand piece. Versus previous projects, we've been able to just simply turn the piece, where this one's not going to work out. So without that being said, let's get right into it. Plus or minus 1/8 of an inch is what we're going to grade it to. On this page of the page 68 here, in this book, it says, it gives you a little bit of the layout. These numbers, 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 4A, and so on, they will correspond with the paragraph and show you how to lay it out, which I'm going to refer to in just a second. Unfortunately, the numbers on that previous page, these are different dimensions that we're going to be working with. Our dimensions are on this page. So let's get right on into it. First thing was first, I determined my width and my height, and I went over and I cut the two pieces for the left hand and the right hand cheek. After that, I brought them over here, and the first thing I did was I grabbed my scribe, and it says on the bottom, in the right hand side of this one or the left hand side of the other one, we need to have a 1/2 inch mark. So I just simply found the 1/2 inch mark, and I ran that across the bottom as well as the right side of that one, and then I followed it up with doing the mirror image of the right hand piece as well, a 1/2 inch there, and then on the inside or the left hand of this one, we put that 1/2 inch mark again. So that's the mark we're going to use as our reference to make all of our radius positions at that point. The next thing we're going to worry about is we're going to lay out our curves or our radiuses for our lock form. And basically what I've done is I've taken the time in advance to set the 4 scribes out for the 4 different radiuses. So we'll start from the back and work towards the front, or I'll start from the front and work towards the back, however you want to look at it. So let's start with the smallest mark, which is a radius, which is 4 inches, or rather, 3 3/4 inches from our 1/2 inch crosshairs that we just got done putting on there. So I've taken this over to my square. I've set it on 1 inch, and then I went up to 4 3/4 inches, and then I tightened it up. So that's how I determined all these marks from that. So let's make the left hand the first inner radius to start with here. So I've got my point number 1 on the sheet. We're going to go from point number 1, which is a dimension of, they've given me on the plans 4 inches, but that's to the innermost mark. We need the outermost mark, so we've already deducted a 3/4 of an inch. We're going to set that on the 1/2 inch mark, and we're going to drag that mark around. So that's 3 3/4 of an inch from the 1/2 inch crosshair. Otherwise, you've got to add an additional 1/2 inch onto that. So that was the first mark. Then I followed up with the second mark, basically the same way. I've reset this one. Again, this one's going to be exactly 4 inches to that second mark from the crosshair. So I set it on my ruler at 1 and 5 to come up with 4 inches, locked it down, went to my original crosshair, and I pulled that down on that mark. And at the same time, while doing this, it's good to note that once it's set, it's good to do, both this left-hand piece as well as right across the aisle there, the right-hand piece. Do both of them at the same time, so you only got to set your square once, and it will increase the accuracy of the left-hand piece matching the right-hand piece. So with that, moving on, we've got the first 2 marks on the inside of the sheet metal here for our lock form completed. Now we've got to worry about the change, or the external heel. Now this is the challenging part of the project, because these are not just as simple as using the original crosshair. We've actually got to find those distances. So how I got that, to find that distance, if you notice on the sheet, the distance from this point to the top is 8 and 4, or rather 12 inches from the half-inch to the inside quarter mark. But if we took that same distance from the left edge of the piece, we've got 10 and 4, or rather 14 inches from our original crosshair. Now if I took 14 inches, it's going to come up way up here off the page. So we've got to determine, we got to set back, we got to figure this distance, and then we got to set it back measured from this inch back down. Now this plan's a little bit deceiving because they've drawn their dimension inside of it, where actually this one's right for the project, but the other one here on the other plan has the distance out here because it is a much smaller piece. So with that, let's get right on into these last two distances. So I've already taken the time to figure out my distance, my shortest radius. The point's actually going to be here rather than at our half-inch, but I can calculate that by measuring from here to here, which they said is 4 inches, plus an additional 8 inches. So I'm looking at 12 inches from the inside curve to this point. So we're going to take it, we're going to go from here up to here, measure that distance, and I'll show you that right now, from point 1 to point 3. So here's point 1 all the way up to point 3. Now again, if I pull that all the way around, I'd be about 2 inches short on this particular project. So what we've got to do, now that I've got it down here on the bottom, is I got to pick it up, move it over, so my left hand scribe is on point 4 per the plan, and then bring it back and establish point 5 with that mark. So I just, after I've got this set, I take it over here, carry it, and put a mark there, and that's how I find reference point 5. And that's this dotted line they're trying to show here. At that point, I should be able to run that from point 4A all the way down, and there is my curve for the part. Okay, and then we do it one more time, but this time we do it from the outside. So we got 8 and 4 is 12, plus an additional quarter, so we got 12 and a quarter inches. You can measure it on a tape measure, or you can set it on your part, however you want to do it. So I've got 12 and a quarter on the dividers there. So again, how I calculated that was right here, from point 1 to not point 3, but a point 3 plus an additional quarter inch out there is where we went to. And if that, I'm sorry if that looked like it was short on the square, that's because this divider does have a tendency to stretch a little bit when you put the pressure down onto it, to make it just right. So it's important to maintain the constant pressure, or so you don't stretch them and things like that, because we are so wide. But again, if I'm at point 1 and the additional point 3, it's going to come almost 2 inches shy of where it needs to be. So again, we're going to pick the project up. This time, rather than going to point 4, though, we're going to have to add that additional quarter inch on there, or how I calculated it was I looked at my plan here and I said, well, my original crosshair was at 4 inches plus 10, or rather 14 out to here plus a quarter. So I measured 14 and 3/4, and then I took my my scratch awl and I put just a small little divot right where it needed to be. That way I can establish this point, and it should come out yet again on point 5 if we've done that correctly. So at that point, you can go from the original point 5, and with that additional quarter inch, just simply pull that down and round. And again, don't forget, you do have the right hand piece from point 5, and pull them up as well. Okay, now I basically got my radius marks complete, but it's important to note that there is a straight section right here. It's almost 2 inches. I don't know if it's quite that. I'll measure it quick. It appears to be 2.5 inches from the edge of the sheet, or 2 inches in between, whatever. But we established those references from our original point 4 back, and from our height of our project. So it might not be exactly 2 or 2.5 inches there. Should be pretty close though. Anyway, that being said, we don't want to have a curve for this last section of the part. So what I did was I established it, I measured it from 0.5, my 2.5 inches per this project, and then I set my combination square so it would go out, extend out the 2.5 inches there, and then with my scratch awl I just squared those off both on the internal and external 1/4 inch marks out there, so that project was straight. The inside was 100% radius all the way to the end, so that didn't make a whole heck of a lot of difference with that. And then I repeated the process again on the right. All those marks I did on the left were on transition to the right in the same formation. I like to draw them both at the same time with that. So like I said, you only set your dividers to that single size once, and you move it over and you draw it again, and this one is identical to this one that way. With that being said, we are ready to notch this project out. So you can see I need a notch here at the 1/4 inch marks on each edge of the opening, and then they're going to be cut out. So all right, okay, here we are. We're getting ready to notch these out, and so again on that 1/4 inch mark we're just going to pop them out of there. And sometimes, if you like, realistically I only need the inner 1/4 inch mark, but if you want the mark there for the point, it makes me no difference. You can put that additional in there also. Then we'll turn the sheet so it's workable for you. Pop both of those 1/4 inch marks in there, in the external as well. That being said, I've got my notches there. We're ready to cut out the sheet. So let's get started on that. So I'm going to take my snips of your preference, usually the green or the red one works pretty well, and make certain that we do not cut it on that internal 1/4 inch. We need that for the lock form. So I've got to move out to my external 1/4 inch here, and then follow that line all the way around the part. Taking the time to make these radiuses nice and smooth is very, very important. It'll make it much easier when you run it through your easy edger as well. Watch out for them sharp points that they don't poke you in the hand as you're coming around there. Sometimes it helps too if you roll your snips to make those corners as well. And I'll show you what I mean by rolling that snips here in just a second. So what I mean by rolling the snips is not this direction, but I roll the handles in to make that corner on that sheet. Okay, let's finish up the inside now. Trying to make that radius as smooth as possible. And the last thing to do is to knock off those notched corners. Take them out of there. Try to keep them picked up so they're not in your shoes or whatever the case may be. There went one on the ground. Let me see if I can catch this one. Making certain there's no sharp points on there. This one here has a little bit of sharp point, so I'm going to cut that one back just a little bit further. Okay. And that'll conclude the fabrication or the layout and the cutting for the left hand side of the sheet. In just a second I'll have my right hand cut out and we'll be right back for the lock form. Okay, everybody, welcome back. So I just completed cutting out the right-hand section. You previously just seen me cut out the left. So we are ready with our fabrication. Now we have our left hand and our right hand section together. You can see that they are a mirror image of them sitting side by side. So the transition elbow will fit, but I just got to watch out that I don't bend one of them wrong. You know, make sure the marks are on the right side, so we keep that left hand and right hand section. So with that, we're ready to run them through the Easy Edger. So here we go. Again, you put them in there on the 1/4 inch mark, get your groove started. Watching your ribs there. Now some edgers don't have the secondary rib. With that, kind of get it set up, snugged up there, and we'll move that around a little bit. Put a little tension on it and follow that connection all the way around. So you can see there's this gap in here which we need to tighten up a little bit further yet. Also it's got a little bit of a curve to it, so we're just going to kind of flatten that down, and then we'll finish stretching that in there. Maybe tighten it up a little bit further. It's probably a little bit tight. And then finish it off. This time again, the second time, I'm following this outer rib here of this roller, this upper roller, on the inner groove or our inner 1/4 inch mark. So if it's short or long, we've got to adjust and accommodate that here to match that. So you should be able to see that this 2.5 inch section is fairly straight, and then the curve starts to take over on that one. So let's do the inside throat next. We'll do the same thing. Get it started, but this time we'll follow it in the opposite direction there. Being patient with it. That looks pretty close, but it's just a little bit narrow yet, and if you look closely, you can see my 1/4 inch mark is further up the line yet, so we got to tighten that up some more yet. Again, this second round, I'm following this outer point of the wheel on that 1/4 inch, that inner 1/4 inch mark that we've made for our lock former. And that should stretch that metal up in there where it belongs and have yourself a nice radius all the way to the end. I think that'll work. Okay. It could be maybe a little bit longer. I think I will run it through one more now that I'm looking at this. You see how it's a little bit more of a narrow spot in the middle and wider on the edges. Let's see if we can tighten that center up and maintain that 1/4 inch all the way around there. So I'll do that. I'll stretch that center by putting downward tension on the part. It'll pull into the bottom roll a little tighter, and should extend the length of that part. And then when I get to the edge there, I got to remember to kind of release that tension so it sits back down where it belongs. That's a little bit better. I'll maybe spend some more time with that later. Let's finish the last one. So just so you know, so you don't mess this up, you know, if I happen to have marks on this outside of this piece and I bent them up, now I've got two left-hand pieces where that would be a problem. So make certain you bend the same direction, as in the left hand and the right hand piece up, versus the left and the right hand piece up this way. You'd have a problem. So we've got to bend it on the right marks here. That way we get that left and right hand mirror image of one another on that. So you can kind of see where I had just them two little hiccups in that run. Let's see if I can tighten that up just a little bit further yet. On the edges, again following that inside 1/4 inch. It didn't turn out too bad from the looks of things there, and we'll finish the inside. So again, just a little bit narrow there, and this edge needs to be tightened up. So sometimes what I do, because it's hard to get tension to pull that in there, sometimes what I'll do is I'll pull it through a little bit and then go backwards at it, or rather from this other side. If you looked at it from here, by cranking the rollers the other way and putting the opposite pressure on the sheet, that'll pull that in where that belongs. And then we'll finish it from here, again stretching. You can maybe see that this is only an 1/8 inch tall, and we want that to be a 1/4 inch, approximately a 1/4 inch in height there, to match our line that I originally marked. So we're going to stretch that to be a little bit taller, with the part being patient with it. And trying to make that come right out how it belongs. So with that, I've got the cheeks, the left and the right hand cheeks, completed. They should pretty well match one another on the outside curves, which it appears that they do, and our openings seem to match, so that's a good thing. I'll probably spend just a little bit more time maybe with this corner. I see there's just a little bit of a ripple in there. Try to work them out a little bit, but all in all, it looks pretty good. So we'll stand by then, and on the next one, I'm going to be making the throat and the heel as one piece. So thanks.